Yeah, let me start and frame it by saying that my original introduction into the public eye at 21 years old, so basically my entire adult life, was me advocating for mental health in the sports field, in the basketball field, in the NBA from a policy standpoint. But really it was an advocacy for human beings and the human condition against the corporatocracy. And because of that, I see all of these issues through the prism of mental health or psychological stability. And I'm not talking about fake woke, 7 times a day, Judeo-Buddhist mental health. I'm talking about the human condition where mind, body, and spirit converge into the perceivable existence mental health, which is part of the reason I was blackballed initially, because I wanted to have a nuanced mental health conversation that wasn't going to be so easily hijacked in the years to come as it has been in the past, 7 years, you could say, and even more recently here in the last 3 to 4. But so the police issue falls right in line with that, I think. And in that, first of all, I see how problematic and dangerous and tough it is to be a police officer, because I don't have any reason to really lie or be deceitful about what I experienced growing up in neighborhoods that are dangerous and people who do crime, right? And that's not to say that there's anything inherent about certain demographics of people who populate high crime neighborhoods either. We can discuss all of that, actually. But my point has always been that being a police officer is a tough job. There's no doubt about that. And the trauma that they face on a day-to-day basis is not properly addressed. It's actually addressed with about as much negligence as you possibly could, imagine. And in fact, when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes clear that not only have the police been improperly placed in between what I call a free people or citizens and the establishment has actually thrown police under the bus after putting them out as pawns, right? And I think the American people particularly, but also Black people by and large, we don't really see or have a sense of that corporatocracy, right? That grand establishment, and the establishment does an okay job of shielding itself by making people who even talk about a grand establishment as conspiracy theorists, which is completely absurd. I mean, NATO, the United Nations, the Five Eyes,
WEF,
the CIA, the NSA, the IMF, the World Economic. All of these organizations exist, and they are super powerful, and they are very good at executing the agendas that they put down on paper, whether people want to believe it or not. But as it pertains to police specifically, I see that they have been used as pawns for corporatocracy. And, it was strange for me to lead a protest after George Floyd was murdered and hear people say things like, fuck the police, or, the whole system is guilty. And I, as a critical thing, I just thought to myself, like, what do they think they mean when they say the whole system? Right. And just in real time, as I'm out there, there's 10, 15,000, 20,000 people out in the streets in Minneapolis, and I'm leading these protests. So what I did was, I tried to speak to the idea of corporatocracy. And in the protest, I tried to physically lead people to the landmarks that made them think about this issue a different way. So, for example, we would start our protest downtown Minneapolis in front of the Viking Stadium, US Bank Stadium. And we would go, down First Avenue, which is pretty much the economic center of Minneapolis. And we would stop at the Federal Reserve, and we would do a die-in at the Federal Reserve. And I'm sure plenty of these, fake woke leftists were like, why are we first of all, what is this building? And that's the first way you can tell that the left and that many of these people at the grassroots level have been misled by a media industrial complexes. They don't even know that a lot of people don't know that if there's a Federal Reserve in your city, that's the most exclusive building in your city.
Oh, yeah.
There's only 12 of them in the entire country, and Minneapolis has one. But there were people out there like, what are we doing here? And I'm like, guys, we're talking about defunding the police, we're $30 trillion in national in debt. Where did the $30 trillion go? Because it certainly didn't go to police departments for them to allow police officers who encounter trauma to have extended paid leave, or to hire more police officers so that we could have a better rotation, so that a police officer who encountered a 3-year-old being killed by their parent because they wouldn't stop, fussing or whatever the case may be, and they have to encounter that on patrol one day and then be back out on patrol 2 days later. Right? These are just fundamental things that have been neglected that would make a huge difference way before we even get to talking about race.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are institutional things, right? That people just have no understanding of. There's a metaphor that I like to use. If you put fire ants and black ants in a jar together, they will go about their business. Pretty much, they'll build their little environments and blah, 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 and pretty much ignore each other. But if you shake the jar up, they'll start attacking and killing each other, right? Because they think the other guy did it. But they never stop to question who shook the jar in the first place. And that's pretty much where we are in America right now, is nobody is taking that time.
And I say the part about them being pawned because the narrative from the establishment or from the media industrial complex certainly is one that suggests or that promotes that people shouldn't look at that people either shouldn't care about the systemic piece, or when they do, they make it superficial as possible, right? It's like the whole system is guilty, and then 2-3 months later, 4 months later, 6 months later, the medical industrial complex isn't a part of the same system.
Oh yeah. Right.
And so and then the establishment has this great way of trying to, and I encountered this well before this most recent attack on right-wing conservatives with being canceled or deplatformed, right? I was deplatformed and canceled by the establishment before Twitter and Instagram were even really popular, right? For just saying the truth. So when this latest wave came, I had that personal experience, and I understood that people who would more readily be considered on my side of the political aisle, because I had led these protests, that I had to have a genuine and authentic message for them as well. And in bringing that, I was just by default pushed to the right.
Yeah, right. That's funny, isn't it? Like people, I guess like Dave Rubin used to be, he was with the Young Turks when he started out his journalism career. Yep. Even Russell Brand, people are like, oh, he's an alt-right guy now. Like, no, he's just fucking saying shit that's the truth. And because you believe in this binary paradigm, it has to be this or that. There can't be a fucking nuanced conversation about anything. It's nonsense, right? You talk about negligence with the police. They have some of the highest rates of substance abuse of any profession in America. And there's a reason for that, is because the job fucking sucks and it's hard and it's long hours and blah, blah, blah. I'm a veteran. We treat our veterans the same way. We grind them to fucking powder. And then once it's time to fucking rehydrate them again, we're like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, buddy. And it's funny that it happens because these are primarily conservative and libertarian people. And one of the points I try to make is this is what's happened to poor people in America, regardless of race, forever, right? The same thing. They grind you into paste, and then when it's time for you to get yours, they're like, oh, sorry, the fucking well's run dry. And it happens every single time. But it's not white people versus black people or anything like that. It is a very small percentage of very wealthy people versus everybody else. And it's been like that since the beginning of humanity, right? It's never been one race versus another since we were cavemen. It's been people who hold land and resources versus everybody else.